Former Governor Sarah Palin joins us with a reaction to the president's speech tonight. Good evening, Governor. And Governor, having heard the speech, what is the reason that you understand to be why we participate in this military action in Libya?
I think that was a profoundly disappointing speech because it proved that the Obama doctrine is still full of chaos and questions. It's dodgy, it's dubious, and it's a good question that you ask, Greta, because we're not hearing from our president what is the end game here. And with Gaddafi still in power, if we're not going to oust him via killing or capturing, then there is no acceptable end state. It's very disappointing that we didn't hear that commitment from our president that America's interests lie in Gaddafi being ousted. And without that being met, I have to again ask, why in the world will our military might be used according to the UN and Arab League desires and NATO's leadership in this skirmish or this war or whatever it is that Obama calls it or doesn't want to call it?
Well, usually on speeches like this, I think there are two purposes. One is substantively, to explain to the American people why we're doing a military action or whatever. The other is to inspire us to feel very proud of what we're doing and that this is the right decision. I actually thought tonight that he felt that he had sort of a flat delivery, that he lost the inspiration part, so it was hard to be convinced of the substantive purpose part.
Well, he did not articulate really what our purpose was, except some inconsistent humanitarian effort there in Libya, and yet the inconsistency lies with the questions now being asked, well, why not Darfur? Why not North Korea? What are we going to do about Syria? All these other areas where I guess America could intervene with our power and our resources to help humanity. He did not make the case for this intervention. U.S. interests have got to be met if we are going to intervene. And U.S. interests can't just mean validating some kind of post-American theory of intervention wherein we wait for the Arab League and the United Nations to tell us, thumbs up, America, you can go now, you can act, and then we get in the back of the bus and we wait for NATO, we wait for the French to lead us. That's not inspirational.
You know, I must confess that when this all began to develop and when I heard the reports that Gaddafi was saying he would show no mercy to his people, he compared them to rats and threatened to go door to door to inflict punishment, and this is, I'm lifting, of course, from the president's speech. When that was going on, it was so horrible that, but now with 2020 hindsight, it's obviously very easy for me to think, like, why this military action for this humanitarian purpose when more people are dying in other parts of the world?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's the $600 million a day question that is being asked now, because that's the cost incurred by Americans as we support the no-fly zone, which, of course, the no-fly zone intervention or enactment is turning into more than that. Again, disappointing speech because we didn't get the answers. We want to know what is the end game. U.S. interests are Gaddafi's got to go. Killing him or capturing, he's got to go because he's going to seek revenge on the United States of America. That will be his MO from here on out, and he will sponsor terrorism unless he's gone.
Well, the president does say he's dangerous, does say, though, that the goal of the mission is not regime change, and I suppose he's going to continue to be dangerous. And I don't know what NATO's response is, but NATO on their website tonight, I looked at it, and NATO said that, that their goal was to be impartial. And I thought, what in the world is that? In implementing Resolution 1973, they said they're supposed to be impartial. How do you be impartial when you're flying over some country and even sometimes shooting off missiles? It doesn't seem to be impartial. NATO also says that their goal is to protect civilians and civilian population areas under threat of attack. And I'm not even sure that's very well defined, but maybe you can't define better in war.
Well, if we were going to protect civilians, doesn't that mean then getting rid of the bad guy? And hasn't the president already said that Gaddafi's the bad guy? He said that some weeks ago when those of us who supported the no-fly zone said, yeah, get in there and act, get rid of him then. And then the tune changed coming from the White House. And
well, you raised something interesting about that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but you raised something interesting because in the president's speech and in multiple speeches, even Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, said it, saying that Gaddafi had lost his legitimacy. But the fact is he never really had it. He took over this country in the late 1960s in a coup, and even to have the sort of the concept that he lost it, he never had it. And that's even, that's sort of an unusual way to look at that suddenly something has happened, and so now he's suddenly bad. He's been a horrible person, since day one.
Right. In these 42 years, there has been atrocities conducted by Gaddafi. So I wonder, well, why now? Why not earlier? What's the imperative nature of this action today? Today, too, Greta, one of the president's senior national security advisors, it was reported, said, we don't make decisions on intervention based on consistency or precedent. Now, that statement coming from his advisor is amazing. It's appalling. It means that this intervention is by ad hoc policy. Obama is ignoring history, and he's engaging in inconsistency. It's making us all, not all of us, but many of us, distrust what it is that we are doing there in Libya, and making us wonder, what is the end game, but where do we go next with all the other countries that are certainly suffering from a lot of turmoil? The inconsistency tonight articulated by our president just made things worse.
In times of war, we're supposed to drop politics, that neither side is supposed to make any decision, take any shots politically. Tonight, the Speaker of the House, Boehner, made a statement saying Americans' response to the speech, Americans still have no answer to the fundamental question, what does success in Libya look like? Now, he's a Republican, but now let me turn to what a Democrat has said tonight, and this is Democrat Senator Udall, who one of my colleagues, Trish Turner, caught up with. And he gave the speech a B+ or an A-, but then he went on to say that he has questions like, what are the details of U.S. involvement in the NATO mission? What's the plan if this comes to a stalemate? What are the ramifications of the ongoing war in Afghanistan? He complains about the cost. He said, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this is paid out of existing funds. So there's a cost element. He also said that the U.S. needs to do a better job for planning for such things. So when you have a Democratic U.S. senator who has got so many questions after hearing the speech, you wonder just how, whether this was the right speech at the right time for this president.
Yeah, those are very legitimate questions on both sides of the aisle. And, another big question that has to be asked, Greta, is, are we at war? I haven't heard the president say that we are at war. And that's why I, too, am not knowing, do we use the term intervention? Do we use war? Do we use skirmish? What is it? What I know is that U.S. interests are not being met if Gaddafi stays in power, and if we are merely taking a back seat to the Arab League, to the United Nations, to NATO leadership, while we just kind of put our finger up in the air and decide what the political winds are around the world, not necessarily knowing and believing that the U.S. interest must come first in this.
In reviewing his speech, what he said tonight, and rereading it several times, I mean, there are a lot of nuances, and I thought to myself, if in times of war that you have to explain it in nuances, it really does mean that you really don't have a clear sense of why we're there, what we're doing, what our objective is when you have to sort of go, well, it's a little bit this, a little bit that. I think that's what I found disconcerting.
That's disconcerting, but I had a little bit of hope during his speech when he mentioned the North Star. I mention the North Star so often. The North Star is part of the Alaska flag, where we up here are able to use as our GPS, as kind of our plumb line, the great North Star with its abiding light over land and sea, a beacon bright. We look at the North Star, and it helps us, I believe, it helps me stay focused on what really matters. So when the president mentioned the North Star tonight, I thought, hey, maybe he gets it. Maybe he understands what the U.S. interests are, how committed we need to be to winning in this intervention, in this war. And yet, even from there, the reference to the North Star, he kind of wandered off again and allowed more of the inconsistencies and the questions and the kind of the dubious rationale being used. More of that just was being revealed.
Governor, thank you.